too soon. This is Mark Massaro here with another episode here with my friend Michelle Bader Ebisol. 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 It's it's new. Ebisol.
Yes.
Sorry, I don't know why it came out like that. I know your last name, Joel. Sorry. Anyway, so what's up with you, Michelle? How you been doing?
I'm good. So this is crazy. Yesterday, Hayden, my oldest, turned 19 and he went skydiving.
Wow,
It
nice.
was, yes. Yeah. He asked me if I wanted to go. I'm like, I mean, I'm not scared, but it's a lot of money. We'll just have you go. He just like randomly thought of that. He has like no fear. And we all went up there. Joel and Grady were at work and they met us up there. So the six of us were up there to watch him. It was like an hour north of here. And he just did it and had so much fun and has like these cool videos and all kinds of stuff. So that was really fun. Watching him skydive, and I do want to do it because Haley's like, I want to do it on my 18th birthday, which will be next year, and I'm like, well, I'll do it on my 25th birthday.
Wow, you're getting younger.
I know I'm getting younger, but on our next birthdays, her and I might go, so that would be fun.
That's
So
cool.
that was really cool. I had random grief. I don't have grief very often, but all of a sudden, like all the birthday memories, I know you guys get this for like kids, like the birthday memories pop up, and I'm like, I was just remembering the day that Hayden was born, and he was our first, and what that was like with Luke, and then just seeing all these birthday memories and these birthday posts that Luke made about Hayden. But I did something special that I did on Haley's birthday. I found a post that Luke had posted, and I printed it and put it in a frame. Like it's it has the top Luke Bader posted, he's like, happy birthday to my big 12-year-old. And it was this really cute thing. So that was cool. Yeah, so that was the biggest thing that's been happening. And then let's see, since I talked to you, 4th of July was good. We play this game called Fire Soccer. So it's actually, we do it on the 3rd of July at my brother's. So you get a roll of toilet paper, douse it with gasoline, light it on fire, and kick it around.
Sounds extremely safe.
Kids ages 8 and up are allowed to play.
Wow.
So, yeah. But we do it in like sections. Like we had like girls 16 and up, and then boys 16 and up, and then like 8 to 15. Yeah, it was pretty fun. My brother learned it in college, and so it was fun.
That sounds like the appropriate place to learn that. It sounds like you guys are from Tennessee or something.
Right, probably. Well, he learned it in Texas one year when I was like 20 something. My eyelashes burned off because it hit me in the face. So that was a good time.
That's the kind of things I would expect to happen from a game like that,
I know, but it was really, really fun, and it's just like a crazy week because we have like 3rd of July party, 4th of July, and then my two brothers are the 5th, the 6th, and Hayden's the 7th. So it's like party all week. So much fun. So we've been having a great time with the 6 of us here in this house and extended family, and yeah, it's been good. So
And Miss Michelle, you also went away on a trip, right?
No, but I did go. I know what you're thinking of. Heart Change.
That's it.
Yes. Yes. So we did go to this thing called Heart Change, which was basically 4 days, you and God, unplugged from the world. You're not doing, social media and calling people and all of that. You're just focusing. And it was a really great bonding time it was the 2 younger kids and Joel and me, and it was wonderful, and some great things happened within my kids' hearts and just like all together, and it was a very great experience. It's hard because it's long days, like 12-hour days, and I've been through it before, but actually I do want to share this really cool thing. You're supposed to share at the end of the weekend like what God showed you, and I was like, well, there wasn't a lot, I've been through it before. But this girl had told me, this is like how she like saw me, that I was carrying the weight of like the kids on my back. So on this Sunday when we share, I'm like, hey kids, come on my back. They're like, what? I'm like, no, try to get on my back. And they're like, pretend to get on it. I'm like, this is what God showed me, that I was carrying all of their grief and pain and weight. And he just wants me to hold a picture of them, and he'll hold them. And I was like, oh, yeah. So
That's cool.
That was what God showed me. And there was like this moment where the kids and Joel and we all got to speak life into each other and speak really positive things. And Peyton said to Joel, I love that you're not just my stepdad, you're my friend. And then Haley said, I love that you know boundaries. My dad's in heaven. You've never tried to replace him, but you're my friend. And I love how happy you make my mom.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it was really, really beautiful. So
That's really cool.
yeah. So anyways, enough about me. What's going on with you, Mark?
Well, I also celebrated our independence from the British on the 4th of July. It was great. I got to go hang out with the awesome and sweet Tina and hung out with her family on the 4th, and that was a really cool experience. Her mom can cook. Oh my gosh, I cannot even tell you how many side dishes and main courses there were. It was one of those like, so they call it on the West Coast, we call it like a barbecue.
Yeah.
They call it a cookout here. So it's basically the same thing.
Cookout.
But so there were so many menu items. It was one of those times where I just I didn't even know where to start. Like I just grabbed the biggest plate I could and just started scooping. So it was awesome. My kids swam. We just had a really good time and stayed at a KOA, which I forgot what that stands for. Like Camping of America. No, it can't be camping. Something of America. I don't know. Kids of America? Oh, no, I don't think that's it. It's like it's campgrounds across the United States, right? So I forgot what it stands for. I used to know. Somebody's probably screaming it in the audience right now, but they have these like little cabins that you can get, and so it was in Kentucky. It was about, I think, 45 minutes away from Tina's house, so it was like we were able to go back and forth, and I was able to meet one of her friends, and that was really cool. Like one of her like really, really close friends,
Awesome. Did they approve of you?
I think so.
Did you pull out your skateboard and do tricks?
No, I should have. That like automatically wins people over. But no. She seemed to like me, and that was cool. And let's see what else. I've just been trying to figure out, my new career and things like that. One thing. So Tina's late husband's birthday was also July 7th.
I saw that. Same
yeah. And so that was a hard day for her, and I felt really bad for her. It's a reminder of how hard the distance can be sometimes because, I wanted to be there for her. I really wanted to like give her hugs and help her like have somebody there to listen to. I mean, I tried talking to her on the phone as much as we could, but I'm a man, so I need to fix everything, right? So I just really wanted to like be there for her, and I just couldn't, and it was hard. But also, like I had a grief moment, and you know me, that those don't come up all that often. I mean, of course, it's always under the surface, but I had like a pretty intense one. I was praying, and all of a sudden, like I was praying with Tina. We were, just having a conversation and started praying, and I don't know, it was weird. I just had this like visual of Lacey like laughing and smiling, and I just got like really emotional and like had to like cry really hard, and that just hasn't happened in a while. But like it goes back to that episode we made, like grief is weird, right? Like it can just hit you out of nowhere. Whoa, there's your microphone. Your camera fell. So anyways, but thankfully I had Tina to talk to about it, and she empathized with me and all that. So it's been a good last couple of weeks overall, and just that's what I've been up to. So I mean, you can always think of 20 more things to talk about, but
let's not bore everyone.
Yeah, so I learned the alphabet backwards. I'm just kidding. I've known that for a very long time.
I think I've heard you do that before.
Yes.
I think you already knew that.
So it's funny story real quick. I actually learned that I used to be, when I was a kid, I was in Scientology. They offered me a job, and I worked at a Scientology. And one of the courses I took, part of it was to learn the alphabet backwards. So I still know it to this day, and I'm still waiting. I'm still waiting for a police officer to ask me to say my alphabet backwards. Hasn't happened yet, but I'm ready.
Wait, can you just do it real quick?
Yes, ZYXWVU TSRQ PONML KJIHGFEDCBA.
Wow, that's amazing. Wow.
So yeah, I just learned it 3 letters at a time. I was like ZYX, WVU, and then just basically memorized it. It does help when you're looking up a word in the dictionary to know the alphabet forwards and backwards.
Yeah, that's really good.
So anyways, but enough about unimportant things like knowing the alphabet backwards. Today we have a very special guest with us.
Yes.
And so you heard her speak a little bit earlier. We're probably like, who else is there with them? So we have Kimberly with us today. How are you, Kimberly?
Well, hello there. I'm doing great.
Awesome. Awesome. Nice to meet you. So, Kimberly has a very exciting story that not exciting as in a good way, but just very different from it's exciting for us in this community because Michelle and I always like to get different perspectives of things that people have been through so that more people feel like somebody relates to them. Somebody's been through what they've been through. And we have not had anybody with a story like Kimberly's. So we're excited to have you here today. And I am really sorry for what you've been through. I don't know the story yet, but I do know the gist of it. And I hope that you knew what I meant with exciting. I know it's not exciting what you've been through, but just it's exciting for us to have a guest with a new perspective. Yes. So why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself and, just start there.
Well, hello there, Mark, and hello there, Miss Michelle. And it is kind of exciting. It's exciting because God is still going to do something. And sometimes in the middle of your stress and your disorder, what you feel is chaos. You're wondering what in the Sam is going on. What are you doing, God? I don't get this. This is not the plan. Right. But if you believe God at his word, he tells you that he still has a plan. And so therefore it is exciting because my plan evidently sucked. And God's plan is probably a little bit better. So
yeah, that makes sense. So, so how did you meet your husband?
Well, I should have met him at all the teacher conferences that we both went to. That would have been a really great thing to say. Gee, we met at a teacher conference and it was love at first sight. That is not true. It was on Facebook.
Oh, okay.
I know somebody that met their spouse like that.
Hey, that's how Joel and I re-met. So yeah,
I know. That's why, I think I remember when you were sharing that, when you had just started in your romance. And I think that's great. I think that's funny. I think God has a sense of humor.
Yeah.
And so, that's where we met. And he was a principal at, when he died, he had been in education for 30 years. Wow. And, so, this is starting my 30th year.
Oh, wow.
Teaching. So we had a lot in common.
Yeah. Yeah. And so you guys obviously started dating. How long until you guys got married?
Our first date was at 6:30 in the morning on,
oh my goodness.
I know, on Memorial Day.
Oh, wow.
On Memorial Day. And it was to have breakfast and watch the sunrise. And so then a year later, we got married on Memorial Day.
Oh, wow. That's cool.
He wanted it to be at 6:30. And I told him no one will come.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No one will
come. You don't hear about a lot of, breakfasts at the reception.
And that's what we had. It was great. We had breakfast. It was wonderful.
That's cool. I like that it was unique. Yes.
It was cheap. Let's just be real. Having breakfast for having a morning wedding with a brunch or a breakfast is much cheaper than a evening wedding with a dinner.
Yeah. Eggs are a little bit cheaper than prime rib.
Well, well, now they might not be, but
right. Yeah. No kidding. I never noticed that. All my friends from California were talking about how expensive eggs were. Yeah. And that never really happened here. So I don't understand. Maybe there's more farms. I don't know where you live, but so I'm in Tennessee and it's, okay. I saw my friends were talking about eggs were $10 a dozen if you could even find them. Yeah. Yeah. They showed me pictures.
Yep. Ours were $5. And so I just stopped buying eggs and I just get egg whites because that goes longer.
Oh, okay. Anyways,
whatever.
yeah, it's just a random thing, but I was still getting the cage-free organic eggs for $5 a dozen, which was that's pretty, to me, that seems worth it. But anyways, yeah, I never saw the cheap eggs for $10 to $12 a dozen or whatever. I got a lot of pictures from friends and they were talking about, refinancing their house to buy a dozen eggs and things like that. I was like, oh my gosh, is it really that bad? And they're like, yeah, you can't even find them. So
yeah,
I don't know if we just have more local. Yeah. I don't know if we just have more local farms here or why, but I never really saw that happen here. Our shelves were always stocked full of eggs.
Very nice.
So that's random, but I hope everybody, gets a lot out of that. I hope that brings a lot to the table of healing and things.
Well,
So
it's
yeah,
a good memory.
yes, yes. So anyway, so why don't you walk us a little bit through what happened, what your marriage was like leading up to, what happened and actually what happened.
Okay, that sounds great. We married then on Memorial Day of 2021, and it was a Monday, duh. And the next day we all went back to work, right?
Mm-hmm.
And did our thing, closed out the school year, and around June 16th, Brian received a work email that tripped him up, and he was hyper fixating on it more than I think I knew. He told me that it was troubling him, but I don't think he shared the truth with me about how deeply it was troubling him. It was just a glitch at work, but at that point in his mind, glitches became problems and not a fixable situation. But that was because there's all these other things going on that I wasn't aware of. Because while we dated, we talked about everybody else's mental health problems. Everybody else's. You name them, we talked about them. And it would have been a prime time for him to share with me, oh, hey, by the way, I've had some mental health struggles myself. And here's where I am right now on that journey. That would have been a wise thing to do. But he didn't. And I think that it was because of stigma. And his family could have also encouraged him to do that, but they didn't do that. And they didn't even whisper to me, hey, Kimberly, did you talk to Brian about his mental health? No one. So when I found out he was suicidal in July, 6 weeks after we married, it was a shock to me. What do you mean? What is going on? I know that you were having struggles with work, but what? And so that's when all the things came out that he had been carrying around with him. And I think people who struggle with mental health and struggle with suicide ideation, it's such a guilt zone that communicating about it, especially as a person of faith, makes you feel uncomfortable. Because he got to the point where he believed that God did not love him. He got to the point where he believed that his brain was being attacked by demons. He got to the point where even going to church, he would look around. And church is dark, all right? We go to a large church. It's dark in there. No one's watching you, but he was pretty sure people were. They weren't watching you. But that's how his brain was working at that time. And so we spent the rest of July in and out of therapy, August in and out of therapy, September in and out of therapy, and then he finally passed in October on the 10th, on a Sunday, while he was under hospital care.
Oh, wow.
And he decided he was just going to run away from the hospital.
Literally, or you mean mentally?
Oh, no, literally. Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Yeah. They were out for a therapy walk, and now I'm pretty confident they don't do that anymore.
Oh, wow.
But they had left the hospital building, walked to a sidewalk in a neighborhood, and he took off, and he did not come back.
Wow.
Mm-hmm. So where everybody else gets to be in this honeymoon phase, I missed that. I had 6 weeks of that. The rest was not a honeymoon. It was thrown into trauma and trying to figure out what is going on. And then all the little things that go along with that.
Yeah. Wow. And how did you find out?
The hospital called me at 3:05 to tell me that he was missing, that he had gone off for a walk and he had run away and he had not come back, and that they were looking for him. What the hospital didn't tell me was that he was, had happened a while ago, and they were just now contacting me. So according to the police report, he was seen on a Ring camera about 1:45 in the afternoon going up somebody's driveway. And so 3:05, 1:45, there's a lot of time in there. And when I found him, it was because I jumped in the car and drove over to where the hospital was. And I was looking in all the high places. I was looking at water towers. I was looking at trees. I was trying to find him. And I remember it was over by my daughter's high school area. And I remember saying, Brian, you've got to tell me where you are right now. And I just drove and drove, and I found a bunch of squad cars. And I thought to myself, bunch of squad cars together. They're probably not having donuts. So I drove into that mess, and that's where he was. And they said, when I got there, gee, how did you find us? My thought was, gee, why didn't you call me? But I think that they didn't want to make a phone call because it was based off of like guesses, not really factual information at that time. And so I'm not, it's sad, but it's not going to, destroy my life that they didn't call me.
And
it wouldn't have changed anything.
Right. Yeah, it definitely wouldn't have. And so, for you, what were you like feeling in that moment?
I believe shock would be the right word, but I also knew this was not my husband's first attempt. He had been getting really good at this. He had several suicidal attempts while we were married. Wow. And so it was not a surprise to me. He did not want to die. He didn't want to die at all. He just wanted to be free of the pain that he was carrying. And when I last physically saw him, it was a week before at a hospital, a different hospital. And he had said that he thought God didn't love him anymore. And I talked to him about grace and how important it is to walk in grace and how good God's grace is to us. And I remember saying to him, Brian, when is the last time you prayed? And he said, I don't think God wants to hear from me. And I'm like, well, that's not true. And so he did pray. And so my last time with him was really joyful. It was hard, but it was joyful. And so I know that day was not a day that God planned. It was not God's will. But God can take our human choices that we make and somehow make a good purpose out of it all. So the home where Brian chose to die in their backyard, that was a family of faith. They go to my parents' church. Wow. And my parents go to a large church as well. So it's kind of random. But the woman there said that she was praying over him in the spirit. And she said, God, just tell me his name. Tell me his name. And she said, God whispered to her that his name was Brian. Wow. And I just feel like Brian was looking for peace and he found it. Wow. And so I wish that it would not have gone that way. And there's lots of other ways to find peace, but that was the way that he chose for himself. And so he's happy, I believe, home in heaven. Absolutely. And then the rest of it is for us to figure out here on earth. And that's where the real journey begins.
Right. And before we move on to the next part of it, I want to just say this to the people in the audience that there is, and I don't know why, there is a large stigma around people thinking that if someone commits suicide, that they don't get to go to heaven. There is nothing in the Bible that says that. There is no unforgivable sin besides the denial of the Holy Spirit, blasphemy of the Holy Spirit. So I can't tell you how many widows I've had to tell in the past years, however many years, that just because he committed suicide, it doesn't mean that there's nothing in the Bible that says they don't get to go to heaven. Of course, it's not God's will for our life, but it doesn't mean, there's nothing in the Bible that says that if you do that, you're not going to heaven. And so I know that there's a lot of people out there who've also dealt with this, and they have wrestled with that. And so I just kind of wanted to speak to the audience and address that, and just say that, like, that is not an unforgivable sin. And it doesn't mean that your spouse wasn't saved. Their mental illness is a real thing. People that are suffering, well, there's things I want to say, but I'm not going to for the sake of my wife's privacy. But, there's people that in their suffering, don't want to live any longer. Like, they're so sick of the fight and the struggle and things like that. And so there's many reasons why, somebody might want to end their life. And also mental illness would be one of those things that would be, God, like you said, God's really full of grace, and Jesus really died for all of our sins. And so, so anyways, I just wanted to address that real quick in case anybody is thinking that or wondering that, because I don't know where that came from, but there is this big belief that you automatically cancel out your salvation. Right. And all of us, there's a lot of us who, when we were first going through being widowed, the thought was contemplated, like, I don't want to live anymore. Now, I didn't actually want to kill myself, but there was definitely a phase where I didn't want to live anymore. And I don't think that was a sin. I think that was a broken heart and mental things going on in my head. Right. So anyways, I just wanted to address that. I'm sorry to interrupt you.
Yeah. My dad said it well. He said, we were not ready for Brian to die, but God was ready to usher him home.
That's good. I think there's lots of people in the audience that need to hear that. That's good.
Yes.
And because that's true for no matter how you lost your spouse, even if they were on respite care or hospice, or you knew it was bound to happen any day. It's still not really something you can prepare yourself for. And so you're not ready. You're just never ready. But God, in his goodness and his grace and his faithfulness to us, he's already got that home ready, prepared. Name is on the front door, and there's food in the fridge. Welcome to heaven.
Yes. And also we have to understand that, as God knows all the hairs on our head and all that stuff, he knows everything about us. When Brian was born, the day he was born, God knew October 10th, 2021. I think you said 2021, right? That was the day he was going home. And that he is saved by grace also, just like all the rest of us that believe. So gosh, what was I mean, it's just like, I have so many questions. So I'm going to start with the first one that is just pressing upon me, that I feel like would have to be a haunting thought. Like, was it a struggle for you to feel like, did you wrestle with that? Like, maybe there was something you could have done, or like all of us have wrestled with, oh, well, if I only would have done this, if I only would have done that, maybe this, maybe that. And I try to tell people, like, no, like I just said, October 10th, 2021, God already knew that date. For my wife, it was August 13th, 2020. That date was already decided when she was born. Not decided, but you know what I mean? It was already known. But was there still like a part of you that was like haunted with, like, oh, if I only would have done this, or if I only would have done that? Did you go through a lot of those struggles that we all, kind of go through?
The only thought that I had about that was, I wish I would have known sooner. I think when you're dating somebody, it's important to be forthright. And even if it's going to hurt you a little bit, even if it's going to cause you to humble yourself, it's better to do it while you're dating than when you're married.
Yeah.
Come
totally.
on, just we're too old for this game, right?
I
like, dating in your 50s is not. It is not fun. But I wish he would have told me, because both he and I'm assuming you too, Michelle, we've been through suicide classes as teachers. We always think, oh my gosh, this is so good. It doesn't apply to me, but thank you. I love clock hour done. Right. So we had I know what I need to do. I've been through many hours of suicide training. but I never thought it would really apply to my life. And so when it did, like in July, when it realized, well, this is now your new life, I kind of had some ideas of what I could do to create a safe house. And so that's what I tried to do. That was exhausting. I don't know how we could have survived years of that, to be forthright. There was not a way that would have been sustainable without becoming Amish, because he was trying to figure out any way, using anything. So the proactive things that one can do if you are living with someone who is going through suicide ideation, you need to remove ties. You need to remove ropes, all sorts of ropes, hoses, even electrical cords from the vacuum cleaners or any electrical cord whatsoever.
Wow.
Shoelaces, belts, knives. We removed him. He had guns for hunting. We removed those and the bullets. Then I saw that he was looking for a gun online. What the heck? So then I figured out that I could go to the sheriff's department and put a flag on him for that. And so I did as much as I could do. What he did not want me to do is talk about this. He didn't want me to talk to people about this. He didn't want my family to know. He didn't want his friends to know how deep this was. It wasn't just superficial. Gee, I'm really struggling with the work issue. It was deeper. And then I wish I would have known family history with mental health other than the family members that he shared. He never told me about his grandfather and how his grandfather was suicidal. He never shared that. And his grandfather and Brian and his grandfather died in a very similar way, in an eerily similar way. And I'm not sure if that was something Brian put together or that it just was happening like that. But his last chicken scratching in a journal that he had at the hospital was just full of why, and then it said grandpa. And I showed that to my husband's brother, and he just could not handle that information. Because he knew what that meant. I didn't know what that meant. He knew what that meant, and it was horrible and awful. And his grandfather did not die by suicide, but he tried to, the same way Brian did. Instead, his grandpa was put into a mental health place for the rest of his life. And Brian was afraid that would happen to him, and that's why he chose this out.
Wow.
I have so many questions.
I know.
Because the way that you are widowed is so different than any other guests that we've ever had. So tell us about like those first few moments, few days. Were you ever angry? Like, I don't know what it would feel like, but I feel like if that's the way Luke had gone out, I feel like I'd be angry at him. And I'm sure whatever you felt, our audience, there are people that can relate to that. So could you share what that's like? Were you angry? What were those emotions like in the beginning?
Shock, mostly just shock. And with a little bit of relief, because I know where he is. So that was the saving grace. And I was not angry with him.
Oh, wow.
I became angrier as time went on. And new things were revealed. And I learned new things, and I became angrier with the dystopia within the family that started to arise. And I was mad because that would have been something that would have broken my husband's heart. But here we are. This is the way it is. This is not okay. None of this is okay. But then I remember that Satan is the Lord of chaos. God is not. So where there is chaos around you, that is not from God. That is definitely Satan doing his best work. And so to take that into my mind and to remember to put this before the throne of God was really important to me, to be able to separate the lies that I was starting to try to tell myself from the truth that God really has. a real big one for me post Brian's death that had nothing to do with his family was that I'm abandoned. And I bet a lot of widows out there feel the same way. Um, but that is, I'm adopted. And so that is also something that adopted children carry with them for the rest of their life. That feeling of being abandoned, you got to be careful because that wasn't true. My birth mom loved me and she chose the best for me. Even though she left me at the hospital, she left me at a good place. She chose for me something different because she knew that the present situation was not going to be sustainable. And so in that situation, I've always grown up learning to tell myself the truth about abandonment. And I had to do the same thing when Brian died. I was not abandoned. He didn't abandon me. He had really big things he was going through. And that's it. He did not abandon me. And God did not abandon me. That's not what the Word of God says. So I had to decide, is God who he says he is? And believe that. Instead of all the intrusive thoughts that we can put into our mind. And it's really interesting because as you look at what intrusive thoughts are, I think as people of faith, we have them. We just don't want to talk about them.
Oh, that's true. That's definitely true. We all have some degree of intrusive thoughts, and that's how Satan works.
Oh, yeah.
I've definitely had the feelings many times in my life, like, you're not good enough to be a Christian. Look at all these men around you. Look at how much better, look at how much more faithful they are. Look at you. Look at the sins you struggle with. Like, you're not worthy of God's love. And gosh, it's so easy to believe them sometimes. You know, you're like, yeah, you're right, you know. But that's like the analogy that, you know, as we stand before the throne of God, that Satan is the prosecutor. He's the one accusing us, and he's going to be right. Everything he accuses us of, he's going to be right, and we're just going to feel damned and shamed and all these things. And I just love this analogy. But then your attorney, Jesus, walks in and he says, Dad, he's one of mine, or she's one of mine. And then he says, case dismissed, all is forgiven. And so when you think about that analogy, like, you understand that Satan is going to launch attacks against you, and they are of truth. But it doesn't mean that it doesn't take away God's grace and what Jesus did for us. And so even though the lies, you know, they might have a lot of truth to them. I might not be worthy of God's grace. I might not be worthy of God's love, but thankfully God is more graceful than I can understand. And because of what Jesus did, I am forgiven. And the prosecution doesn't have a case against me because my attorney is Jesus. And but that is true. Satan does always work like that, and he wants you. I mean, they say that Satan's greatest accomplishment would be to get you to believe that he doesn't exist. So, you know, he is constantly trying to do that. He is constantly trying to fill your head with lies about you're not worthy. Or I remember for a season, now I've never felt this way after seeing what I saw Lacey go through and the experiences I had during that journey. I've never struggled with this ever again, but I did go through seasons of like, is this like real? Like, is my faith like real? Is God real? And now it's like, I've seen too much to question that. I know I've witnessed the miracles of God firsthand, and I've witnessed him speaking to me. I've felt it. I've seen incredible things, some things I've never even heard of happening to anybody else, that are just like undeniable. So thankfully I don't struggle, but I know a lot of people struggle with that. Like, is God really real? Like, am I really like spending all this time like going to church and all this stuff? Am I really believing something that's real? So anyways,
and I guess my advice for other people in our situation would be to stand on the Word of God. Because that is actually when all the things are falling apart around you and you don't know which way to go. And there are so many decisions, but then everybody tells you, don't make big decisions. Well, you have big decisions to make. So thank you. Not helpful. You, 1, stand on the Word of God. 2, surround yourself with people who can speak wisdom into your life. And not a lot of people, just a small handful of people who can journey with you, who can speak wisdom into your life at that time, and just support you, you know.
That's great advice. Yeah, that's really good advice. Michelle, go ahead.
Oh, I just want to go back to, so this all happens. You're not angry, which is awesome. What was it like for you? Like, what did life feel like? You know, the shock you talked about. You're not angry at him, but what was it like? Did you feel like, you know, as this is happening, you're planning like a celebration of life or whatever, you know, comes next? Like, what did life feel like for you in those first few days? Do you have kids? You have older kids, right?
I do. Yeah, okay. My children are both adults.
Just wondering what your support system is like and all of that.
I felt like I was a guest at my husband's funeral. And I don't like that feeling. That's how it felt. Mostly because we had just been married 4 months and 10 days before he died. And so in the minds of some of the people in his family, I was not really his wife. I mean, it's only 4 months and 10 days. That doesn't count. Okay. So it was just, and so the funeral was basically planned by his brother and his brother's wife. Oh, wow. And I just was along for the ride.
That's so hard. I'm sorry.
Mm-hmm. And that's just that. There's not there's not a word to describe it. It's just the way that is. And in the same token, I moved out of the home that we shared. I moved in when we married. We didn't live together. So I was only in that home for 4 months and 10 days. And so to some people in the family, that's not my home. To some people in that family, the fact that we shared a budget and finances, those aren't my finances.
Oh, wow.
So it got really messy. And that's what made me mad at Brian. I would always tell him, your family is screwed up. And like, he's dead. But you know, when I'm yelling at him here on earth, your family is driving me crazy and they're screwed up. Can you do anything about this? Can you go, Brian, hello, you're right there. Go tell Jesus, gotta fix this. This is not okay. And so that was the hardest part of the journey.
Oh
but I have figured that out by remembering that they are hurting. They are grieving. Everybody grieves differently, and to extend grace to them. But also my boundaries are very high and I choose to not communicate.
Wow.
Yeah, it would be hard. It would be hard to communicate after going through something like that. And especially, you know, because it's not like you guys, and even if you were, that's fine, but it's not like you guys were only together for 4 months.
No, right.
Like you were together for 2 years, then got married. That's.
It was, and then in order to make the family feel like I was not, like, the thought was, oh my God, she's going to run away with all the money. That's why she married him. She's, Latina. She probably has all these weird, not true thoughts were going on. And so there's a little bit of racism involved. And that's just the way it is. And so in order to like have them back to like call off the dogs, we had to go, I said, okay, well, fine. He's dead. Let's change the will. Here you go. Here's the house. Oh, wow. Okay, fine. You want, okay, no, I know that your dad had different monies for you, but you want this money? Okay, there you go. So we split things up. And that was to be able to create a space where they no longer could say, oh, she ran away with the money.
Wow.
So you had that in addition to everything else. Because I'm thinking about I've almost been married 4 months. Like in 10 days, it'll be 4 months. And I can't imagine like then that's not considered marriage. I'm like, it's
Right.
marriage. Like you're married,
Right.
you're committed. Like
Yeah, God
Yeah.
considers it marriage, you know.
God does.
yeah.
And so guess what? So do the courts. So
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
but I didn't feel like going through all this with Brian. It would have exacerbated the grief. It would not have made anything better. It would have made everything worse. And I just could not do that to my soul. And I couldn't do that to Brian. So I was willing to do what I needed to do to be able to create boundaries and develop my own journey apart from them.
Right. So
Wow.
you moved out of the house, and then how did you continue? Like you're so positive and so full of life and joy. How did you get to that place? Like you have what I feel like the audience wants. Can you share with us like how did you go on this journey? You're how far out now from when he passed away?
It'll be 2 years in this coming October.
Okay, so you're still fairly new in this. Like how did you get to this place to where you are now where you can talk about this? And I see you doing like similarly what we do, like you're online trying to inspire widows and help, and I see a lot of like suicide awareness. You do a lot of things like that. How did you get from there to where you are here, joyful, peaceful, trying to help other people? Can you share us like a little bit along the journey? How did you get here?
God still has a plan, and that's the only thing that I had to keep in mind. And so trying to figure out, like, if you look at my journals and not my hair, if you look at my journals, you will see that that is my overall theme is God, here am I. What do you want me to do? What do you want me to do? It's Brian's story. And I think, it's Brian's hope. Brian would hope that this doesn't happen to anybody else.
Mm-hmm.
And so, because he didn't want it to happen to him, he was not okay with this happening to him. He was very distraught that it was happening, which is why I think he felt like he was being attacked by a demon. And I'm not saying that wasn't true. I'm just saying, I don't know about that part.
Mm-hmm.
So I know that God still has a plan, and that's how I move forward. God still has a plan. I wake up every day and say, God still has a plan. And I actually don't need to really know what that is today.
Mm-hmm.
I just need to walk forward in faith today. I need to go outside my home and pick up my manna for the day and use it, and then pick up my manna for the next day. And I think that's how I'm operating right now on still like a day by day basis. Case in point, my mother is a planner, my sister's a planner, and all three of us were together for the course of 2 weeks recently for my daughter's graduation. And they're like trying to plan everything out. I'm like, girl, back out. Kimberly plans one day. That's all I can do. But at the same time, I'm a teacher, and teachers have to plan everything out. And that's what saved me was my career.
Okay.
I know that everybody leaving the teaching field, like cats being chased by wolves right now. Like, bye, so long. This whole thing of educating, good luck. There's not going to be any educators in 10 years to teach your children because we're all leaving. But that is still the same thing that saved me because where I did not know, I have no concept of time. I don't know. Really, I had no concept of time because what is time? What happened? It was 4 months and 10 days. How did this happen?
Right.
So like my time frame is shot, but teaching made me have to go, okay, at 9:15 I need to do this.
Yeah.
And at 11:09 I need to do this. And at 3:15 the kids go home.
Yay.
But that is what helped regulate me again. Because I did not understand what was going on. I couldn't figure out, how did this happen? Where did what happened to time? Where is God? Where is heaven? Like all these little things started to go, teaching saved me. And I'm very thankful for that. But my mother and my sister still are good planners, and I'm a good planner, just one day at a time. That's pretty good.
Right.
That's fine.
Right. And did you have any certain verses or songs or things that helped you through this time?
Yes, I love Jen Johnson from Bethel Music, probably because I can sing her better. Her alto and we get along very well. And she has a lot of beautiful songs. And one, she talks about, you hold me completely in the palm of your hand. And I am everything to you. And you are everything to me. And so I just played those lots of songs from Jen Johnson, from Elevation, Bethel Music, and Maverick City on repeat and repeat. But then, I don't know if your listeners remember that Stephen Curtis Chapman's daughter died, Maria, moons and moons ago. And he had a CD out called Beauty Will Rise. And that is his CD about going through the grief journey, right? With his daughter's death, full of trauma as well. And so I would listen to that CD over and over and over and over, because it takes you through the questioning, and it takes you through the wondering, God, do you still love me? Do you still see me? What is happening? Why did this go down? But at the end, he talks about how spring is coming and beauty does rise. It does. Creation shows us that every time. If you look at the fires, my skies here in Minnesota have been laden with smoke from the fires up north in Minnesota and in Canada. And that's devastation, right? But life is sometimes like that. But beauty still will rise from a devastation. It's not going to look like how you thought it would. You're not going to be who you thought you were going to be. And you have to stop and pause and intentionally walk forward. Not randomly. Random steps are not my thing. And some people are like, well, you just have to walk forward and take your first step. And a lot of people, our paces and our steps are different. So you can't judge somebody else's journey in grief as they walk forward, because their pace is different. Their step width is different. And for me, there's days when my only width was a pinky toe at the beginning. Like I can walk as far as my pinky toe can go, and it's not going to go very far. But eventually you start walking farther and farther, which is why I think it's important to journal and to go back, because then you can see God's faithfulness. When you wondered where God was, you can go back into your journal and you can see and claim God's faithfulness over your life, because as the song says, all my life you have been faithful. All my life you have been so, so good. And even in this destruction, God, I still believe you're good. And I don't know how, but I believe it. And so I believe that goodness will come from this, because he says goodness and mercy will follow us all the days of our lives if we surrender our life and our plan to him. So that's kind of it. That's kind of where I sit.
That's really great. And it's such a reminder of how important perspective is, because people can walk through the same journeys and take it very differently. Now, obviously, we all have different life experiences and things that give us the abilities to cope with problems or whatever. And so some people have more life experience than others and whatever, but it is such a testimony of how your perspective can bring healing. And so, and like Michelle and I, we essentially journaled through this podcast. So we can reflect back on our journey and how far we've come and different things like that. And I think that's good, because as we go back, we will see God's faithfulness. And even though we can't see it right now, I always like to illustrate that, like, we are looking at our life in a very linear, we can only see what's right in front of us, but God sees the whole line from above, from a different dimension. And he sees the beginning, the middle, the end, and all that stuff. And so I think perspective is an incredibly important thing to have, and to constantly be trying to talk yourself into having a positive perspective. And even when we don't feel that, as we all, go through grief, I think it's important to come back to a place of that. Yeah, that's really, I think that's just a good reminder. So I think that it is your perspective that has allowed you to see God's grace and to see his goodness, even though. And when I remember, gosh, what I went through with Lacey was insanely hard. And I remember the only thing that I had to hold on to was, no matter what Satan throws at me, he can't take away my salvation. And that was the only thing I had to hold on to, is because everything around me was so dark and ugly and sad and terrible and extremely frightening. And I was just filled with anxiety and panic attack and fears. And the only thing that I could hold on to some days was, my salvation is untouchable. But that helped me get through that day, or through that hour, or through that minute, whatever it was. And so I think that's really great that you've found that perspective, and it is such a testimony of what God can do with our hearts. And another interesting thing you said, you mentioned the forest fires and things like that. Well, fire promotes regrowth, and I know that's what you were getting at. So a lot of times these big, huge, old trees, when they burn, well, now there's enough sunlight for these new trees to grow and keep the forest sustained. And so while forest fires are, seemingly to us like so devastating, it allows the forest to continue being a forest. If it wasn't that, all the new trees would choke out and there wouldn't be forests for long. So those things are also important. And, sometimes our life can be like an illustration of that sometimes we have to go through really difficult things to build our character, to build our faith. And God allows us to go through things, I believe, sometimes to make us more like Christ and to bring us more into his light and, give us these perspectives of his goodness. And sometimes that's hard to accept when you're just seeing what's right in front of you. But when God sees the big picture and he knows what it's going to do for you in the long run, it can be very, very powerful. Sorry to take it away, Michelle, for so long, but what are some more questions you have? I'm sorry, go ahead. Yeah.
Just for back to the forest fire allegory, even within the ashes and the ashes of the forest fire, but the ashes of our lives, the ashes that we face, the ashes that I carry, right? Because my husband was cremated. Even from ashes, there are chemical properties that God has already put in there for regrowth within the ashes.
Yes.
Absolutely. They're filled with minerals.
I know. Isn't that great?
It is, yeah.
I feel like I just cling onto that science like that. Because God is a great and marvelous scientist. Well done, God. Thank you.
No kidding.
Yeah, that's great. So what do you think is the most challenging thing about being widowed?
Probably just not having somebody to talk to.
Right.
Like, you had a bad day. You had a good day.
Yeah.
You swapping stories with Brian.
Right.
Because we didn't work in the same school. So I miss his stories of I miss the stories about the wackadoodle situation.
Yeah, I'm sure.
And I shouldn't cry about it because some of them were not that funny, but but I do. I miss those. Especially because it was during COVID. So COVID played a huge role in his mental health too.
Oh yeah.
Because he had hard COVID and with pneumonia. And then as a leader of the school, having to start and stop school 7 times. And then the staff was like, oh my gosh, what are we doing? And Brian's like, oh my gosh, I don't know, because this is the first time I've ever been a principal during a pandemic.
Yeah.
Right. And so a lot of people in education behind the scenes, it was not that grace. It was not a lot of extending of grace. It was hard for teachers. It was hard for him. And so, just the silly stories of the parents during that time, what the antics of students over Zoom.
Yeah.
I was teaching middle school, and, over Zoom, and I was like, oh, Lord have mercy. So we had a lot of stories. We had a lot of fun. Our first date was the day that George Floyd died in our city, and so I married him for a variety of reasons, but one was his compassion
Mm.
for people of other cultures
Mm.
and how he tried to see the world through their eyes.
Yeah.
That's so important to me, to be like aware and understanding and want to know more. And so, you know, we went through the George Floyd stuff. We went through the lockdowns because of George Floyd. We went through the riots. We went through a lot, and COVID and all the stuff. We had a lot to talk about. I miss talking to him.
Right. Yeah. What?
I think we can all relate to that.
Yes, definitely. What advice would you give to a brand new baby widow? Like they're brand new in this journey, maybe a month, 2 months out.
See a doctor would be one of my first ones, because grief affects your whole body. It affects everything. It affects how you sleep. It affects your eating and your digestion. It affects how your heart is working, because it's actually working overtime. And there have been times, even recently, where I felt like my heart was gonna just fly out of my body. That you seeing a doctor and talking about that with them, and letting them know that you're going to be coming back for some regular visits, just not for like talk therapy, but just for physical. That's like, good. Am I okay? Here's what's going on. I need to be okay. You will feel strange aches and pains because your body feels it all. Yep. Okay, that's okay. That's okay. Go to the doctor and talk about that with them, and they will have so much compassion for you and understand. I had a hard time sleeping initially, and so I went to a psychotherapist, and they gave me what they hoped would have been a great medicine to help me stop the nightmares. But that really wasn't helpful, and it cost way too much money for those visits, even with my own very good insurance. So that was a firm no. But there's other things that you can do. For example, Grief Share is something that is around the entire United States. And all you have to do is go into Grief Share, plug in your 5-digit zip code, and up will come a list of all sorts of places where you can go to Grief Share classes. And that was really helpful, getting plugged in so that you know you're not alone, because you're not alone. And you will feel alone. You'll feel like you're the only one. And so if you don't get out of the house and go pick up your own manna for the day, you're going to stay inside and you're going to isolate yourself, and you're going to believe that you're the only one who's had to do this. You're the only one sobbing today. But then you meet all these other people who are also struggling, and it's like the friendship of people that you wish you didn't have to make this way, but you're so thankful that you did.
Yeah.
That's really good advice. And I've never heard anybody give the advice to see the doctor. And I think that's great advice, because I would love to know the percentage of widows, myself included, Michelle included, that have Googled, "Am I having a heart attack?" Oh, yeah. Like, oh my gosh, I feel like everybody's Googled that who's been through this, because the anxiety, and gosh, it just feels like you're having a heart attack, or that you're going to, and it's and then you get worried about it, and then the anxiety spikes even higher, and then you feel like you're even more going to have a heart attack. And so, Michelle, have you Googled symptoms before?
Oh yeah, like everything, you know that, like every little thing. I went through major anxiety. So, you know, Luke actually died of a blood clot. I thought I was having a blood clot. I still struggle with that because I have like weird calf pain. Like there's just so many things that going to a doctor is good advice because you feel like I felt like I was dying, and all of these things, your body's all going crazy, and I didn't sleep. I still don't sleep well. Still trying to find a good way to sleep. But yeah, I think that's great advice to go see a doctor. And
you know, sometimes I hear of, you know, couples, whether it be, you know, like longevity couples, right? That one dies and the next dies right after them because they die of a broken heart. And that is really true. And you can see that with Carrie Fisher and her death, and then how her mom died after her.
That's right.
Because your heart is working so hard. God bless it. Go see the doctor.
That is really
that's true.
great advice. So, kind of want to change subjects a little bit. You are a fun, beautiful, boisterous woman. What are your thoughts about dating again?
I would rather live inside the hairy armpit of a baboon.
Oh, okay. So you do not want to date again. Okay. I love your answer. It is honest. It is true. It is. You're probably going to relate to people out there who are like, yeah, I don't want to date again.
It just makes me anxious because um, I personally have a lot of just inner healing to do first before I even subject any human to that.
Yeah.
It's not out of the ballpark. I'm just not there yet.
Yeah.
But I really celebrate my friends who are. And so in our widow group, there are widows who have married, one who's getting married, one who's seriously dating, and I love that for them. I love that. I love you for that journey too. I'm like, yeah, go get him, girl. Go get him.
I did get him.
Right. And I love that. And I feel like I'm just really good at cheerleading for my friends right now. But I'm still afraid sometimes that like everybody around me is going to die. And so I feel like once I can like maybe break through some of that, my anxiety about everybody around me that I love is going to die, maybe that will help. But also I'm hoping to run away to go home to Costa Rica for 1 month. I don't want to visit my family there. I have a lot of family. My birth grandparents had 22 children.
Oh my gosh.
Oh my goodness.
Because they were good Catholics and had no TV. And so and then funny little side note, my grandfather also dated my grandmother's sister and had 3 other children. So I have a lot of family there. Right. But that's not what I want to do. I want to go online. You can, like, I found different places where you can work for eco lodges for free, and you work for free, you get food and lodging. And I found some along the coastline of my home country. That's what I want to do. Wow. I want to do like an eat, pray, love. Yeah. And then I feel like after I do my eat, pray, love experience, whatever that might mean, wherever that might be, I think I'll be okay.
Yeah.
That's awesome. What good self-awareness, and a unique answer. And I'm sure that's refreshing for a lot of people to hear because, we, like you've said, we all grieve differently. And, for me, it has been an incredible blessing to my life to find somebody else, to have Tina to talk to when I'm feeling grief or when I'm feeling sad, or to have that companionship again. But I know we don't all fire the same way. We don't all have the same heart and desires and things like that. And so this is a good thing for the audience to hear, that like there's nothing wrong just because Michelle and I are like big believers in finding our happiness again, and we've promoted that and talked about it, and there's nothing wrong with that. But there's also nothing wrong if you'd rather live in a baboon's armpit, like that, you know what I mean? Like that's awesome. That's good self-awareness, and like that's just great. And there's nothing wrong with that. And I think that's great for a lot of people to hear that, because they might hear Michelle and I and think like, gosh, what's wrong with me? How are they able to like fall in love again? I could never do that, or whatever. And even though we've talked a lot about that, like, if you don't feel that way, that's okay. This is a great example of somebody who doesn't feel that way. And that's awesome. So thanks for sharing that. I think that'll be really powerful for a lot of people to hear.
Yeah. And there's also like, if that is your journey that you would like to start dating, and maybe one day that'll be my journey, you really need to figure out your finances. Like, I don't want this to sound weird. I like money. I like money organized. I like knowing where the money is. I have a list of all the things of my beneficiaries, and I know where I'm ready I have a book for my kids of what to do when I die.
Wow. Oh, right? Wow.
All the passwords, all my bills.
That's awesome.
That's really smart.
Right? I have all that ready for them. But when you remarry, there are some things that your children will not get if you remarry. And so you want to make sure that everything financially is lined up for that too. If you remarry, will your kids miss out on some of the beneficiaries and the monies that you had set aside for them? Because spousal rights are real. And so if you have a new spouse, that does push out your kids on some things. So you want to sit down with a financial advisor to know where your money is, what it looks like, what can be lost if I remarry, and is that going to be worth it? Because I know for a friend of mine who's much older than us, she's late 70s, with her VA, her husband was in the military. It is not worth it for her to remarry. She will lose a lot. So she's just chosen to never marry.
Wow.
But she was engaged, but that's when she figured out she couldn't do it. She had to break her engagement like 20 years ago.
Wow.
I know. So like little things you don't think about, because usually like, oh, look at that guy drinking coffee. He's cute. And maybe that's true. But first, get all your financial things. I would say, my advice, get all your financial things intact. Have good conversations with your financial consultants. Know where your money is. Have a plan, and then begin your new journey.
Good advice.
That's just my small idea.
You're full of good advice. So I've seen you a lot on social media. I'm sure people are going to want to follow you, maybe reach out to you. Where can they find you, or how can they get in touch with you?
Well, welcome to Threads.
Oh yeah, we just started that. That's fun.
But I usually just use my Instagram at hopefully Kimberly, hopefully_Kimberly, because I just want to be a merchant of hope. That is something that I picked up from my friend Jimmy Casas, who is an educator, who writes lots of education books, and he asked me to write in his book about being a merchant of hope, and I did. But now that's stuck. So, and I just feel like if you are a merchant of hope, I'm not here to sell you anything. I'm not here to sell you, next steps to being a brand new widow. Step one. Like that's not, I'm just here to talk about hope, and hope can be found first in Christ Jesus and in the Word of God. And then just looking for hope every day. There's so much beauty around you that if you're you could miss it easily because you're thinking that God is going to bring it about a certain way, but he brought it this way, but you missed it. You missed it. And I think that's true about blessings. And I think that's true about hope. So, and just look for hope every day.
If we have people in the audience, like we had someone the other day reach out to you who is also a widowed by suicide, would you be open to talking to them?
Oh, yes, absolutely. Because it is a club. It is a club that, widowhood is one club.
Right.
And then, the choice, the ways that our spouses die is puts us in a, little like subgroup.
Yeah.
But, because the way that your spouses died, you have your own little subgroup too.
Right.
And that's okay. You can speak differently into those things for the people that need to hear it. So
right. Well,
no, that's exactly right. That's why we were trying to have guests with different stories, different losses and things like that, because Michelle and I, our real world experience is cancer. And so even somebody that lost their husband suddenly and tragically, it's going to be a very different journey that they've been on than us. And so, we just like to get a lot of different perspectives and things like that. So thank you. Thanks for being a guest with us today.
For being so willing to do that. Mark, did you have any other questions?
Wow. I mean, there's so many things like rattling around in my brain, and it's just something that I so don't understand. It was so different for me. And, Michelle and I had like the pre-grief stuff like that. And so that's a very real thing. I had to accept that my wife was dying before she died. I had to make funeral arrangements before she was gone. And that's very different than what a lot of other people, went through and stuff like that. And so, no, I mean, I don't have any other particular questions. I'm just thankful for you sharing your story. And I know that has to be hard sometimes. And, I do have a question. Do you feel like So for example, if I tell somebody I lost my wife to cancer, there's automatically this like, oh, I'm so sorry. Like, do you feel like people get weird around you or like look at you strangely when you say they lost their spouse to suicide? Or
Yeah.
you know what I mean?
One
You lost
person.
your spouse.
Yeah. Yeah. One person told me that, well, because I don't really get any, I don't know if the word is messages. I don't dream about my husband. I don't really like, I'm not that kind of person who goes, oh, gee, there's a cardinal. That must be Brian.
Mm-hmm.
Somehow my husband turned into a bird. I don't know. I'm not that kind of person. And so when I shared that with someone, they said, oh, that could be because he's in hell. And I'm like,
That is
that also could
horrible.
not be it. That's probably not it. But, I'm not going to blurt out to them, what a horrible, disrespectful thing to say.
Oh, that's
Jeez.
like probably the worst comment I've ever heard said to somebody.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
I've heard that from people more than once. So that's why I talk about it a lot, is because I just don't want people to think that that is true, because that is hurtful. And in the heart of somebody else who is walking through this journey, that could be the one thing that will trip them up and not allow them to heal.
Right?
So
Yeah.
that's about it. Go get my device. I'll log you in.
And also, like, even if you think that, you don't say that out loud. I mean, that's just like common decency. Like, you don't say that out loud. I mean, we've heard some wild things that people have said. I understand what you're going through. My dog just died.
Right.
Things like that. Like, those are like ridiculous things, but even those, you keep that to yourself. But yeah, I can't even wrap my brain around what would make somebody think that that's okay to say.
I think it's just I think it's just because they want to they careful when you hold it. They want to I don't know if there's a really good reason why they would do that. I think that they just want to say something, but then the words get tangled up and out comes something they probably did not mean to say. Like, those are inside thoughts.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, yeah. Keep those inside. Yeah.
At school, I teach my autistic students, right? And they always are blurting things that they should not be blurting. And I'm always reminding them, oh, honey, that's an inside thought. That's an inside.
Mm-hmm.
You should say
So
That's some good verbiage. Inside
That's really,
thoughts. Yeah.
really good verbiage. That's awesome. Thank you for
Yeah.
sharing. This has been
So
so eye-opening and so it's going to be good for so many people. I hope that they really take you up on reaching out to you because I believe you can help them in ways that we never could. So thank you for being a guest and being willing
well,
to be open.
you're more than welcome. It's been so much fun. I feel like we were just old friends sitting around a campfire,
Exactly. That's our
sharing
hope.
our souls.
Yeah, that's our hope with this is that we're just, friends talking about life. So, Mark, would you like to pray us out?
Sure. Yeah, absolutely. Lord, I'd like to thank you so much for this ministry that you've given us that is somehow through your means being able to help people. And I thank you so much for Kimberly's story and her willingness to share it and the perspective that you've given her on this life and on this journey. I pray that she would reach many people through her ministry and that people would feel courageous enough to reach out to her who need help. I pray that you would help her through this season and that you would also bless her with the ability to go to that trip to Costa Rica and that it would be a huge blessing on her life and provide lots of healing and what she needs. And I'd just like to pray, Lord, for all of those who have lost a spouse in any way, but today in particular, anybody who's lost their spouse to suicide. I pray that Kimberly's words would have been helpful to them and insightful and would provide them the abilities to move forward into the next chapter of their life and to not feel guilt and to not feel shame or embarrassment, and also to protect their hearts from anybody saying something stupid. And Lord, I'd just like to, again, just thank you so much for this ministry. It's such a blessing that you've allowed us the trust to help this community of people. And we ask all these things and praise your name in Jesus' name. Amen.
Amen. Well, if you liked this podcast, give it a little bing 5
Bing.
stars, bing, on Apple Podcasts, wherever you listen. Spotify has it too. I've noticed that we have a 4.9 on Spotify and on Apple Podcasts. So you can give it some 5 stars. You can like write a little nice thing. Forgot to tell you, we got another nice one the other day on Apple Podcasts. So
nice.
That's great. We really appreciate that. And if you have been blessed by this ministry and want to help us out, as we've mentioned the last couple episodes, Widow Goals, which is my nonprofit, we are now under that. And Widow Goals not only provides podcasts and social media support, we also provide grief recovery support groups and scholarships for widows, as well as local and hopefully someday national events. So if you've been blessed by this ministry, there is a link in the show notes that you can give to the nonprofit. So it is a tax write-off as well. So thank you guys so much for listening. If you would like to be a guest, you can email us at widowedtoosoon@widowgoals.org. Reach out to us on Instagram, Facebook, all the places. So thanks again for being here, Kimberly, and thanks everybody for listening, and we'll see you next time.
Thank you.
Bye.
God bless.